But I thought it would be good to take one aspect of what I do, which is the commissioned works of art, because I feel like of all the things that are part of my daily life, the commissions are the most challenging, and I think we can all pretty well figure out why. So I'll look at the project, I'll look at the budget, I'll look at the scope of work being particularly important. I'll look at the time frame, how much manpower I have to put into it, how much travel there is, and I come up with a fee. So I do not take a commission. I get charged a fee. There's a set of ethics that exists for consultants. Not everybody adheres to them, but I belong to a group called Association of Professional Art Advisors. And we have a very specific set of ethics, and you can't take it both ways. You have to charge a fee, and everything has to be completely transparent. So you're not going to take a hidden commission from a client, from a gallery, and not pass it along to the client. If that's found out, you won't be a member of APA anymore. This is a small world, even as global as it is now, and you'd be crazy to cut out the gallery. I mean, these are the people that support the artist and put a lot of money behind them usually, and it's like stealing in a way. So we don't do that. And we always ask if we talk to an artist directly, we always ask if they're represented. I tend to find my artists through dealers more than not. I find a lot of works through the fairs. I go to a lot of fairs, and I tend to find a lot of the works there in the fairs, and I deal with dealers, and I have been for so many years, 30 years, that I tend to look in my box of tricks with dealers first. But if I'm introduced to an artist that is not represented, then I'm happy to deal with that artist as well. But with knowing that if we find one great thing for space A, we'll readjust for space B, C, and D. But yeah,
Right.
we're always given a budget, and then we have to back away from the budget, understanding the cost of installation, of shipping, of all of the taxes and customs and things like that, fabric. So, I mean, we can get into the other part of the discussion, which is all about proper business technique. But from our point of view, this is proper business practice. You make it transparent. You treat everybody with respect. You try to get everything up front taken care of, and if everybody does what they're supposed to do, then you generally have a successful outcome. Certainly you can make site modifications if you need to, if you're working with architects in the planning stages. But just from a general point of view, it's nice to be able to commission something the appropriate size, something that fits the space really well, something that you can then light, something that you can, from a practical point of view, get the wall blocked so that you can put something heavy on it. The more time you have and the more advanced planning, the more successful it's going to be, I think, for obvious reasons. Since we're not construction people or architects, is you've got to present that solution to the architect, who then has to present it and get bids on it from the contractor. So it's not so simple like a form. If you have to do something that's a big change order, you've got to go to the architect. The architect generally has to draw it or figure out what the solution is. Then that has to go to the contractor, and then that whole thing has to get bid. But this is actually an interesting point about change orders, is that you may cause a delay in the construction schedule that will have repercussions that are way beyond just the cost of changing a work of art. So, I mean, if you end up costing the construction schedule to be delayed and people don't meet their target deadlines, the repercussions go all the way down the line, and you could be looking at, at the end of the line, a lawsuit for, non-delivery of the product on time. So you've got to be very, very careful about change orders. The two things that are your scariest objects are budget and deadlines. And you have to really understand how to bid a project when you do this. You have to be your own general contractor. And that means you've got to get accurate bids from your subcontractors. And you've got to understand that you are responsible for the quality of the work of your subcontractors. And I know that seems obvious, but I deal with artists many times who feel like, well, I'm the artist. This is the fabricator. I have no control over the fabricator. I have no control over the shipper. I have no control over, the installer. But in business, we don't accept those excuses, and we insist that you are in charge of the quality of your work from beginning to end, meaning if the subcontractor screws up or the fabricator doesn't do a good job or the shippers damage the work or the installer isn't very good, it's your responsibility to get it right. If you tell us that you want to make a steel piece, we're going to say to you, okay, let's look at this wall and how much does your piece weigh? I mean, from the most simplest point of view. And then we're going to work with you to shore up that wall. So again, you have to do all this in advance of the building going up. But it's, we don't leave you on your own to say, oh, well, you better figure out how this wall is going to hold it. We expect you to say, okay, I've done this piece before. I know that at this size it's going to be this weight. Well, we never tell an artist what colors to use. We never tell them to change their work in a particular way, which is not what their work should look like, or is not germane to their normal work. If it's an existing work, then we just try to make it fit beautifully. If it's a commission work, we'll show you what the space looks like and say, what do you think? I think that, it's at this point in time with all of the digital media that's out there and the way that art intersects with fashion and with advertising and with media in general, I think we're open to anything. Public art projects are good and bad. The good is that they have to spend money based on certain statutes and requirements, which is nice. And the good is that they often, my experience has been that they have more money to spend than the private sector. So that's always a great thing. But they have a process which is so heavy and onerous and bureaucratic that I find it very, very difficult to work in that. And I'm sure artists do as well. I think a good lawyer will save you a lot of trouble. They will put a barrier between very, very unreasonable demands that a client may have. I mean, I had one client in Knoxville, Tennessee that basically said, we want to use this as a logo and on all our advertising, and and no one can stop us. And I just said, you can't do it, and if you want to waive that from artists, because artists can waive their rights, we all want to work with you, because it's just such a terrible thing to do, and you ought not be doing it. Manage a client's expectations. And that is, it's kind of a broad term, but that means that when you do a proposal and you do your renderings and you do your budget, they kind of look at that and sit in a meeting and say, great, we love it. They expect you to do exactly that. They expect the budget to be what you said, and they expect the artwork to look like what you say. So you have to manage it by not going too far afield once you've done this proposal, which is why the proposal is so important. When you do something permanent, you need to be thinking about your materials and the longevity of your materials and the stability of your materials and how that will be long term.